So every so often in life, and certainly in college football, themes emerge. And whenever we're talking about Kalen DeBoer in Alabama, one of the themes that's consistently emerged is that every time they're having a major recruiting weekend filled with some of the nation's top prospects, big wins follow. And this weekend is absolutely no different. Today, we need to talk about Kalen DeBoer and the Crimson Tide getting yet another major recruiting win on the trail, this time for another top offensive lineman, Micah DeBose, out the state of Alabama, and we have got to break it down. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes, N for no. Are you excited that DeBose joins the fold for Alabama? And then let me know what you think about Kalen DeBoer and company and the way they have been able to recruit. I can't wait to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And ladies and gentlemen, as I said in our last video, we are less than 300 subscribers away from our next milestone of 22,000 subscribers, and I believe we can get there really quickly. As the last video we published on Alabama, only 34% of viewers were subscribers. So if you don't mind, hit that subscription button. I would love to have you a part of the community. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions are massive. But having said all of that, let's jump right into this and talk about why Micah DeBose is such a big win for Alabama. First and foremost, he's one of the top players in the state, along with being one of the top players in all of high school football. Whenever we look at the 24/7 Sports Composite, he comes in as the number 89 overall player, regardless of position, the number 8 in his position, and the number 8 player in the state of Alabama. And he stands 6'5", 315 pounds. Now, one of the things that I've talked about previously whenever it comes to Micah DeBose that I really love, and it's a theme with this staff, right? We're talking about themes. Versatility. This is a kid that plays offensive tackle in high school, but looks to be slotted in at guard and has the ability to do a whole lot on the offensive line. Whenever we look at some of the guys Alabama has got, that's a theme. They have the versatility to play multiple different positions on the offensive line. And the reason why that's notable to me is it means this staff has been hyper successful at evaluating guys, understanding what they like and what's going to work in this scheme, and then going out and getting major wins on the recruiting trail. Apart from his versatility, we're talking about a guy that's real strong and really aggressive at the point of attack, which is exactly what you need to be successful on the offensive line, especially in Power 4 college football. On top of that, he is a pancake factory, serving them left and right, absolutely sending some poor kids on the high school level into the next level of the defense and inevitably onto the ground, and it's a theme. Remember, we're talking themes here. One of the things I love, though, is whenever we're talking versatility, not only that he has the ability to play tackle or guard, but that he also has some appearances on the defensive line as well, where, you guessed it, he's wreaking havoc. He understands what a defensive lineman needs to do, at least at the high school level, to be successful. And though that may seem insignificant, I really like that. It's part of the reasons why I like whenever you get a defensive back, if they played wide receiver, though that's not something that I look at as a must, I do think it's a little bit of an added benefit. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if a defensive back, such as a Kool-Aid McKinstry, played both cornerback and wide receiver in high school, he knows how a wide receiver is going to operate because he can tap into that mindset. Much like DeBose, he knows how a defensive lineman wants to operate to be successful because he can tap into that mindset. He played it. And even if it's just something that occurred in high school, that experience, in my opinion, is big. We talk all the time about how experience can play into being successful in college football. And that may be just a little bit of experience, but it is experience. And I'm certainly not saying it's relegated to just Kool-Aid McKinstry or Micah DeBose. Not the point at all. But my point is that any player that can do that, it is just a little sprinkle of something extra that I think you have to really enjoy, you have to really like, is that versatility to be successful in multiple different areas of the game of football, and it's something I talk about all the time here on the channel. But one of the things we have got to talk about is the way this staff is recruiting, because as we sit here and have this conversation on this Sunday morning, Alabama, per the 24/7 Sports rankings, is the number 2 recruiting class in the nation with 18 commits. And this class is filling up. Now, don't get me wrong, there is still time and opportunity and space in this class, but I also don't think it's a bad thing in the slightest that Kalen DeBoer, during his first season at Alabama, is going to go into the season with a recruiting class that already has not only an incredible foundation, but if we're likening recruiting to building a home, it's got an incredible foundation and the frame has already gone up. I don't think that's a bad thing in the slightest. You've gotten some of your major lifting done during the off season, and now you're in season and you can focus on a few guys here and there to add in. I think that's a really good place to be, especially for his first season coaching at Alabama. One of the things we talk about with Nick Saban is that Alabama may be 55th or 65th in the nation in April in recruiting, but it wasn't going to stay that way long. Nick Saban could get wins during the middle of the season because Nick Saban was Nick Saban, right? I don't think anybody should try and be Nick Saban. If it happens organically and not the wins and not being GOAT status, that's not my point here. I'm talking about recruiting, right? Being able to get those wins during the season. If you can do it, by all means, do your thing. But for Kalen DeBoer, understanding that there is immense pressure under him. He's at Alabama. He's at a blue blood now. And with that does come pressure. I'm not saying pressure in terms of job security in year one. That's not my point. But there is inevitably pressure when coaching at Alabama because there is a standard. And I believe Kalen DeBoer is going to uphold that standard. It's part of the reason why I have been so excited about the hire. And I haven't shied away from that. But I do think it's a great thing that we're sitting here talking 23rd of June. And this recruiting class has 18 commits. Because now, if there is a decommitment, or if there is guys who want to jump on, you already have that strong foundation and the frame of the house is going up. I think that's an awesome place to be. I really, really do. But let's give credit somewhere else. We talked about this in the last video we did, but Coach Cap has done a phenomenal job on the trail, and let's really dive into this. This was a guy that was the last big hire for this Alabama on-field coaching staff. And one of the reasons why I find it so impressive, not only what Cap is doing, but what Alabama as a team is doing on the recruiting trail for offensive linemen, is because for some of these guys, Cap was not the first guy they spoke to. They spoke to Scott Huff. They thought that was the guy that was going to be the Alabama offensive line coach. He ends up going to Seattle, taking that job. And in comes Coach Cap. And they haven't missed a beat. One of the things we've continually talked about with Kalen DeBoer in Alabama, and certainly it extends to Coach Huff, is that they are doing all of this great work on the recruiting trail without years-long worth of relationships. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some players, such as a Jackson Lloyd, where they do have an extended relationship. That's absolutely present. But there's a lot of players they're going and getting wins for that they don't have the years-long relationship with that other coaches in the nation that recruit really well do. Other coaching staffs that recruit really well do. What Coach Cap has done has been so impressive to me is because, like I alluded to, a lot of guys didn't know if he was going to be the guy because he wasn't the guy that they first had that initial conversation with. That was Huff. But it has not mattered in the slightest. Coach Cap is doing a phenomenal job on the recruiting trail, and I'm really excited to see what he does with this Alabama offensive line. But let's look at the wins they've gotten on the offensive line. You have the one we're currently speaking about, but then you also have Michael Carroll. You have Jackson Lloyd. You have Mal Waldrop, and Alabama is still after Ty Haywood, the 5-star offensive tackle from Denton Ryan. If they lock up Ty Haywood, this is going to be an incredibly elite offensive line class because as we sit here and speak right now, this is an elite offensive line class. The last thing I want to talk about is some of the things that I find really cool about what Kalen DeBoer is doing, and certainly it involves this win. But whenever DeBose announced that he was committing to Alabama, he did so on stage. There's a video of it. It's fantastic. But right there, you see the coach's reaction. You see the people in the building, their reaction. You see Ryan Williams up there getting hype. which really goes to prove something we talked about whenever Ryan Williams committed, that he was one of the biggest wins Kalen DeBoer may have at Alabama, not only because of the talent he brings to the table and what he can do on a football field, but the kid's energy and attitude seems to be infectious. Every major visit that arrives on campus, you look and right next to them is Ryan Williams, recruiting his tail off. And we love that. We talk about that all the time, that coaches are great recruiters, you got to have it, but your peers can really move the needle. And that's why I love when players take on that role as well. Richard Young did this, Jalen Mbakwe did this, and Ryan Williams seems to be doing it every single time we turn around. But I think that creates an environment that's infectious, especially for these players. I think it creates an environment that's exciting for these players, and you love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. But the way it happened was really cool. I'm interested to see what other wins this staff continues getting. Because as we said, number 2 in the nation with 18 commits. And one of the themes that has emerged after these weekends is that it's not usually one recruit that pulls the trigger. Usually it's at least 2. So my question is for all of you, who's next? Who would you like to see added into this Alabama Crimson Tide recruiting class? I can't wait to hear from you. That's it. See ya.